Today's movie is a truly rare but relevant story. It portrays selflessness, impact, and genuine love for humanity, all exhibited by a National Youth Service Corps member. Summary of the movie: Miss PJ. As the movie begins, we see Patience, a copper, coming into a small Yoruba community on the day of their festival. That was the first day she ran into Mrs. Adeyemi, the principal of the school she was posted to. She was taken to the Copper's Lodge. At the lodge, she was introduced to Copper Festus, who was, based on what we see, a womanizer. On trying to settle down and put herself together in the lodge, she suddenly heard people crying and shouting outside. Someone had just died. The girl actually bled to death. After that, next we see a girl walking through a bush at night, going to see someone. The following morning, Miss Adeyemi, the principal of Otitodun School, was seen praying with her family. At Patient's first day in school, Mrs. Adeyemi informed her that she would be taking English language. Patience used the opportunity to express the shock of what she witnessed on the day of her arrival, the demise of a young girl who bled to death. Mrs. Adeyemi empathized with her and proclaimed all will be well. On that same day, Patience was introduced to the other teachers in the school: Miss Isio, the biology teacher, Mrs. Balogo, the chemistry teacher, and Mr. Joseph, the Yoruba teacher. Afterwards, she was introduced to her classroom, the SS3B students. She introduced herself to the students and told them to feel free to call her Miss PJ, as against calling her Patience Jidofo. She was a very caring and selfless person. She took out time to visit every student that was not in school to ask them their reasons for not being in school. Few weeks later, there was another death. Another girl had bled out. When the information got to Miss PJ, she got so concerned and worried that there was no single health center or even a mini hospital in the town. She even came up with some extracurricular activities in the school to help the students focus on other areas of their lives outside studies. She kept visiting students and encouraging them to come to school, giving them gifts and making them see why school was very important. Copper Festus, on the other hand, was busy looking for a way to get under the skirts of these students, which Miss PJ was not happy about, and confronted him. Miss PJ's concern for the well-being of not just the students but the community made her make a report to the local government chairman about the demise of the two girls in the community, because it wasn't coincidental to her that they had both died the same way, bleeding out from their private parts. Next we see BC, one of Miss PJ's students, by the river getting water. She was the daughter of a man who had lost his wife, and he had become so protective of his daughter. Her father was warning Copper Festus never to come close to his daughter. Everyone knows the man to be fetish and very diabolic. Copper Festus, being defensive, said he was only trying to play with his daughter. At school, Miss PJ was getting a lot of backlash from Miss Isio, who was not comfortable with the extracurricular activities and was obviously very jealous that Miss PJ was getting so much love from the students and the school authorities. The death continued. Next was the death of the daughter of the diabolic man. A girl he was very protective of and one who Miss PJ had grown very fond of. At this time, it became very, very obvious that something was really wrong somewhere. Mrs. Adeyemi and Miss PJ mourned her death. Her father was filled with rage. He moved about the village laying curses and making incantations against anyone that had a hand in the death of his daughter. The police began their investigations in the bid to discover who was behind these killings. Suddenly, a man on marks was seen strangling the diabolic man who had just lost his daughter. He suffocated him and buried him alive. Surprisingly, the man on marks was Mr. Adeyemi, Mrs. Adeyemi's husband. Turns out that he wants to become the next king of Otitodun and was asked to sleep with 7 virgins and bring their blood to his baba. Meanwhile, the police are still very much on their investigations. While in school one morning, Miss PJ noticed that one of her students, Funke, was not in class. Miss PJ was curious to know why Funke wasn't in class, so she decided to visit her house. She met her mom and her mom told her that Funke had just left for lessons, which apparently Miss PJ did not know about. At this point, Miss PJ knew something was wrong. Apparently, Mr. Adeyemi had invited Funke to come to the bush where he sleeps with girls and they eventually go home to die. Most likely because of the curse that had already been laid, Funke was a hard nut to crack. She struggled with Mr. Adeyemi until he hit her hard enough to make her unconscious. Then came Miss PJ, who tried to save Funke by hitting Mr. Adeyemi with a stone several times on the head. Suddenly, Miss PJ was hit down with a big stick. It was Mrs. Adeyemi. This was absolutely unexpected. Mrs. Adeyemi came to save her husband, which means she was part of the entire plan of killing virgins. In trying to continue the process on Funke, they were invaded by policemen. Mr. and Mrs. Adeyemi were caught, and this brought about the absolute liberation of Otitodun community from the sudden and mysterious deaths.